Hey, Misty, I love you. Hey, Misty, I love you.
Hey,
Think about you.
Good to see everyone this morning.
You ready?
We're ready.
Go
I'm
for
ready. I'll see if you can figure out the secret.
it.
Can you figure out the secret? Oh, that don't look so bad. I had my eyebrows done. And they're a little dark, and I'm a little vain, but I don't have any eyebrows. So I got me some eyebrows, and I thought, I can't do Zoom, but see, they look better than they do.
They're gonna like
They don't look so bad. Okay, all right. I'm so vain. That's what it is. That's why they sing that song to me at every party we have. She's so vain. All righty. Good morning to everyone. And I thought we would talk about we're sick as we are secret, and that how kept secrets make us sick. And you know, it's just sort of a given that addicts of any sort that we keep secrets, but you know,
Wait a minute. You went away. Hold it. She went away.
She muted.
okay. Can
Are
you
you
hear
back?
now?
I don't know what happened.
I
Can you
see
hear
her
me?
still now.
Okay,
are you ready?
you're back. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so a lot of families, most families have some skeletons in their closets and things that they only talk about behind closed doors. And, you know, I think for normies, you know, people that aren't addicts, you know, they can have their secrets and they can keep their secrets. But, you know, for those of us that have any form of addiction, secrets are deadly for us. Now, we don't have to tell the whole world everything about us, but we need to have at least one safe person. You know, and we're so fortunate in a 12-step program that we have something called sponsors. And, you know, Bill W. called Ebby, who took the message to him. You know, they didn't even call them sponsors back then. What he called Ebby was his beloved, because Ebby was the one who took the message to him, and he called him his beloved. And because, you know, Ebby planted the seed of recovery in Bill's brain, and, you know, and God fertilized it. And I mean, he absolutely found recovery in a flash of light. So secrets are, you know, it's something that is held really deep inside of us. And we avoid a lot of times revisiting those secrets. And you know, and what is usually going on with a lot of us, y'all may not have this, but, you know, I know being in the addiction field and as long as I have, and I know when I first went in, and I can still experience this, you know, and I've been in the field over 40 years, but every once in a while I think, one of these days they're going to catch on that I don't know anything, you know, and that's called that imposter syndrome. We think that we're just imposters, and one of these days everybody's going to find out the secret that we don't know anything, that everything we know we're making up. And that's the mind of, I don't know if normal people do that, but I know a lot of addicts, and I know a lot of addicts that have had that same syndrome. So, you know, a lot of times the secrets that we deal with is well, and what's a secret is, it's a Latin word that means set apart from, separate. And, you know, when we're keeping that a secret, we do feel set apart from. And that's why with clients who come in, we really encourage them to, first thing we have them to do is to write an autobiography. And you know, be as truthful as they can. And And a lot of times they'll get real truthful. And then throughout their treatment, they'll add a little more to it, a little more to it, a little more to it, because there's so much shame surrounding secrets. And then you couple that with if there's been any form of childhood abuse, and any form of childhood abuse, but particularly sexual abuse, it can be so deep seated. A lot of times people won't even remember, they won't remember the abuse, but the body does. And through good therapy and treatment, a lot of times those secrets are revealed. But I think it's a real God deal that those secrets are not revealed until the person is capable of facing the truth and working through them. And so sometimes those secrets pay off that we don't know the whole truth at first, but then through recovery, it's really important that we seek the truth, because the truth will set us free. You know, when I was working at the Drug Alcohol Treatment Center in Abilene, and this has been really over 40 years ago, a little more than that, we had really just opened and really didn't, I really didn't know much then, I promise you. We were all just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. But I knew I went into the business in the first place to work with families. So we had this woman come in that brought her husband, and she had 2 children with her, but she brought him in for detox, and it was obvious that she had been beat up. So we got him in detox. I brought the family, and it was a little boy about 10 and a little girl about 4. And children are taught early on how to lie. And so we got in there, and it was, I mean, the woman was beat up. It was obvious. And so I got to talking with her, and her son, who was 10, spoke up and said, well, Mama fell down the stairs. And so she proceeded to tell about how she fell down the stairs. Now, if you really want to know the truth in a family, ask a 3, 4, 5-year-old. And that 4-year-old little girl spoke up and said, no, she didn't fall down the stairs. Daddy hit her, and Daddy kept hitting her and hitting her. Don't you remember, Bubba, we hid under the bed? Well, I mean, she told the secret. But the 10-year-old had already been taught how to lie and how to keep those family secrets, you know. And I will tell you, that family, that whole family, and it wasn't anything that I did. It was absolutely a God deal. But I kept working with that family, and that treatment center did not want me to work with families. They wanted me to strictly work with the alcoholics. So I would sneak around and work with family members, because I knew, you know, I grew up with an alcoholic mother and a rageful, sick father, and I knew the importance of working with the children early on, and really didn't have much training in it other than on-the-spot training of growing up in a dysfunctional home. And so that particular family, and I've seen many thousands of people recover through the years, but that particular family, I guess it's been probably 10 years ago, I had been asked to speak at a conference that we used to have in Abilene over Labor Day, and I was speaking as an Al-Anon. And when I got through, this man came up, and he had 2 or 3, I'm about to cry, 2 or 3 little kids with him. And that was the 10-year-old son that was in that room that day. And he had never chose to drink. They live in one of the small towns around Abilene. He heard, I don't know how, but well, he was a member of Al-Anon, and he heard I was going to speak, and he drove over and brought his family and to thank me. And I didn't need the thanks. It is a God deal. It's not me. Anytime I get to thinking I'm healing, that it's me. I gotta better quit this job because it is all a God deal, you know. And I've got a friend on here that works in the field and he knows what I'm talking about. You know, we can't take any credit because if we're willing to take the credit for people's recovery, we got to suit up and take the blame. So I'm not willing to take any credit or blame. We're just messengers. And but I thought that is the benefit of working with families early on. And I quit that particular treatment center and came and put in Shades of Hope. And one of the main reasons is so I could work with families, because I knew that this is a generational disease. It's a generational curse, and it goes from one generation to the other. But the good news is it can stop in one generation. It doesn't have to keep going on. And what it is addictions, eating disorders, process addictions, you know. Now kids may grow up in recovering addicts' homes, you know, and they may go through a period of time of rebellion and you know, they may even drink a little, they may get into eating disorders, they may blah, blah, blah. But the thing about when kids grow up in a recovering home, those parents are on it. They watch it, they know what to do, and they're willing to, you know, to get them help. They're willing to let it play out, the disease play out as far as they, you know, I mean, it is different when you grow up in a recovering home because parents have tools. So getting back to the secrets, that little 4-year-old, if you really want to know what's going on in the family, ask the youngest child because they don't know to lie yet. The 10-year-old had already started lying, he'd been taught to. And so what secrets do, it will cause a sense of isolation. You know, in that sense of there again, if those people ever find out who I really am, they won't want to be with me. And it can be emotionally exhausting to, you know, to hide the secret, to keep the secret. I know as a kid growing up with an alcoholic mom, there was no, I don't guess they even had child protective services there. And I don't think there was probably anything available for kids. I don't know. But I missed a lot of school because I stayed home and took care of mother. And I look back and I think if there had been a concerned teacher, a loving teacher, or someone that knew about addictions and, you know, could have intervened and, you know, to the point of maybe even getting me out of the home. But I don't know, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today and that's sitting here talking with y'all. But it is, children need to be protected, and they don't need to protect family secrets and carry those family secrets. And that's why we have Family Week is, I like what Kim says, that we encourage the family to just throw everything out in the middle of the floor, get it out there where we can look at it, where everybody can look at it. I see it as a blanket that's covering up all of the dysfunction. And what Family Week is we began to pull that blanket off and began to look at it. And, you know, people began to tell the truth. And, you know, when we can tell the truth in a safe place, what we say, the truth sets us free. Now, sometimes the truth hurts really bad because if they're talking about you, and particularly, you know, when they're confronting you, as long as we're talking about someone else, it's not as bad. But when we have to look at ourselves, but what keeping secrets do is a big part of mental illness. It can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. It doesn't cause addictions. You know, addictions are about brain and body chemistry, but it can sure contribute to it. It can sure help it get started. And, you know, they're taught to, and I was taught, this is the message that I heard. what happens in this house stays in this house. You don't go tell anyone what is happening in that house. And so, you know, and I'm going to be talking next week about adult children of alcoholics. But in the first book that I remember reading about adult children of alcoholics was from Claudia Black. And, you know, she gave us the 3 rules of living in an alcoholic dysfunctional home. It's we don't talk, we don't feel, and we don't trust. You know, you don't talk about anything that goes on in this home. Keep it here. And then we're taught not to trust anyone. And my dad taught me that. He said, all the people you can trust is in this house. And, you know, that's the people that I didn't need to trust. That's where all the abuse, I mean, I'm talking about heavy duty abuse. And so it confuses kids. And then we're given the message, don't feel. There's nothing wrong here, so don't have a feeling about it. And, you know, like, and I'll talk a little more about it next week, but Claudia Black, like I said, was the pioneer in the adult children of alcoholics movement. And she became a social worker. And there wasn't much taught in school about alcoholism back in those days or addictions at all. And what she did get didn't apply to her because, you know, there wasn't any, she didn't have a parent that was an alcoholic. You know, we say that denial is don't even know I'm lying. You know, and she went off to school and she was raised up in North Washington State. And she said when she went back, her dad owned a bar. Anyway, long story short, the denial came off of her eyes and she realized that she was raised in a severe alcoholic home. And it was her job to keep the secret about how bad dad's alcoholism was. And they didn't even call it that back then. Back then, and it hadn't been that many years, people didn't call alcoholism what it was. Or today we call it substance abuse disorder. We don't even call it alcoholism anymore. It's called substance abuse disorder. But back then, they called it having a drunk in the family, just a drunk, you know, and they had a lot of negative, you know, we didn't know it was a disease. We just thought it was all just behavior problems. So I'm getting into next week. And but I am going to talk about adult children of alcoholics. And like I said, Claudia Black was one of the first pioneers in it. And then, and I'll talk about some other pioneers, but in the early days here, many years ago, I had brought, when Claudia Black brought out her first book, I can't even remember the name of it, but anyway, us at Hardin-Simmons University, I partnered with them and we brought her here to speak. And that was the first time anyone spoke in Abilene, Texas about adult children of alcoholics. And then later on, she was for a time, 6 months or a year, she was our program director or our treatment our clinical director. And we, you know, that was before Zoom and all of that, but we did it by phone. Every Thursday, we would sit and go over our clients with her. And it's surprising when you work in the addiction field, how many of the people who come through the doors of any treatment center come out of alcoholism or come out of some form of dysfunction. You know, and it's not to blame parents. It's not a blame situation. It is what it is. It's a disease, and it all has to be treated. Okay, so, you know, there's usually one, and I was the message barrier once and I was pretty young. I was 13 when I started driving my mother to AA meetings. And I couldn't go in because I wasn't an alcoholic and I had to sit outside. there was an old song that was popular then. It was called "What's Behind the Green Door," and that AA group meeting had a green door, and I always wanted to know, what do they do behind that green door? But what I did, she didn't read her big book, but I would read it. I read it cover to cover, and I learned that it is, or through that, that, you know, when your mother drinks, and it was very shaming. It was very shaming. And so I would try to keep the secret when I'd go to school, and I would make up, this is when you keep secrets, you have to lie. Y'all know that? You have to lie to cover up the secret. And I would lie, and then it's hard to remember a lie. And then I would have to tell another lie to cover up that lie. It was all about keeping the secret about how bad things were in my home. You know, those of us in a 12-step program, you know, when Bell first wrote the big book, and there, you know, and then there was an article that came out in the Saturday Evening Post about the AA movement. Everybody in the world thought this is the way we need to live. This is a way of life. Of course, it's right out of the New Testament. They could have got it right out of the New Testament. It is a way to live. And at first they thought, oh, we need to put it in schools. We need to put it in hospitals. We need to put it here. I mean, the whole world needed the 12-step program. That idea didn't last long, because recovery in the 12 steps are not necessarily for those who need it. It's for those who want it. Now, a lot of people could benefit from, I mean, anyone could benefit from the 12 steps, but those of us that have some form of addiction, I think we're pretty special people, particularly if we get to have, you know, show up in the fellowship and get to be a member of a fellowship that teaches us how to live and how to deal with dishonesty. You know, that's one of the first things that we learn, is how you recover. How you recover is honesty, being open, and being willing. That is a pretty simple process, don't y'all think? That's how you recover. Is first thing, you just have to get honest. And I will tell you, when people first get into the program or first get into treatment, we cannot be completely honest because of the fear of what they will think about us, and then the shame. I was very fortunate that one of my very first sponsors, and I've had many, and they've either all died or have Alzheimer's today. You know, that's the thing about getting older, because you have, most of us, or I did, had older people that were sponsoring. Anyway, I won't go into all of that, but it is sad. So first time I did the 5th step, I was scared to death, because this woman that was going to hear it, she was a nurse, and she was an RN, and she was smart, and she was beautiful. And I had her so high up on a pedestal, you know, I thought she was God. And the way why it could work is because she knew she wasn't, you know, she knew she wasn't. If she had thought that she was my God, we'd both been in trouble. But anyway, I remember doing that first 5th step, and I kept putting it off, because I had little kids, and I had to do this, and I had to do that. And one day she came out, and she brought someone with her to keep my youngest daughter. And she said, "Get in the car." I said, "Where we're going?" I had given her my 4th step to go over. And she said, "Get in the car and you drive." And so, no, she drove. And she then handed me that 4th step guy, you know, that I had written. And she had me to start telling her, giving her my 5th step, and she drove and I talked and I cried, and everything I would say, those deep, dark secrets that I didn't want anyone to know. She would just laugh and she said, well, I've done that same thing. And then she'd tell me a little bit about what she did. And then I'd go to the next thing. And she said, well, it's like we were raised in the same house. And so by the end of that, and this is the beauty of the 12-step program, by the end of it, yes, there was a lot of pain, but there's also a lot of laughter, a lot of healing, to know that there was someone that had done some of the same things that I had done. And that she was someone that I respected, someone that I loved. And that helped me start to build a little bit of self-respect for myself. But it took a while. I had such low self-esteem. It was pathetic. But anyway, all righty. So that goes to where a burden's shared. When we can share those secrets and a burden, it will cut it at least in half, usually more than that. When we can share those deep, dark secrets with someone, it can at least cut it in half. And a lot of times when you give it to another person and you have invited God into that, a lot of times all of it will be gone. And if not, then throughout your recovery, little by slow, those layers will be peeled off. But then when you begin to recover and you begin to share joys with people in the program or with your family or with, when you're not so burdened down with secrets and all, and you began to share the joy of living, that doubles. When you share a joy, it doubles. You've seen that, haven't you, in your life? I got on when Jackie was talking about her beloved Carly. And, just watching her here share about Carly. I mean, can I say something? Okay, all right. When she came here and brought Carly, all we saw was pain. It was pain. It was so much pain. Pain with Jackie, pain with her husband, pain with Carly. And I'm about to cry now. And now what you're hearing, this is what recovery does. What you're hearing this morning from Jackie is the joy of recovery. Her daughter, who could hardly look at herself in the mirror for the shame that she was carrying, is graduating college. Now, is that a miracle or not? That is, to me, a miracle. And not only that, the journey that we have watched her take, that Carly take, and how she has, that self-esteem has built, and she's been able to have fun and make friends anyway. And that goes for a lot of people on this screen. I've had the privilege of, my job, or what I do, this my vocation, is gives me a front row seat at miracle watching. We see miracles every single day. And if we don't see them while the client's here, we see them later, because a lot of times people will not leave all of the baggage here, and they'll go out, maybe relapse, come back, maybe they come back 2 or 3 times, but they're still treating the symptoms. And once they get into recovery and acceptance and get, past the shame, then we get to see the change in them and how it goes down into their family and how they have families. So, what we have in a 12-step program, not only do we have a common problem, that's what brings us together, is the problem. Now, you've heard this, it's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The people on the Titanic, they had a common problem. And they were bound together as tight as they could be to save themselves to get on shore. It was awful, and many of them died. But some of them reached the shore. Now, I don't think they got to shore and looked around and said, well, it is Tuesday at noon, so let's meet here next Tuesday and talk about our journey. Because see, the problem was over. Once they reached the shore, they probably had some PTSD. They didn't know about it back then. They probably had some leftover trauma from that, but basically the problem was over. Now, see, with addictions, guess what? We can live in recovery every day. But if we ever forget that we are addicts, we will relapse on a heartbeat. And that's why we have to keep all of us grouping up together. We have to stay grouped up together and talk about not only the problem, but the solution. You know, we get past the problem. But then, you know, we may not have the problem with the substance or the food. People with eating disorders, ours don't go away that quick. Food addiction, problems with eating disorders, I mean, excuse my language, but it is an absolute bitch to treat. You know, alcoholism, it is difficult, is absolutely difficult. But once you put that tiger in the cage, if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, you never have to take that tiger out of the cage again. But for those of us with any form of an eating disorder, we have to take that tiger out and walk him around 3 times a day and maybe a snack in the evening and feed that tiger and then try to get him back in the cage. Because once we feed him, he wants more. That sucker never gets enough until we get into recovery. And this is where, you know, people with eating disorders, it's not any substance abuse disorder is nothing to play around with. But I'll tell you, eating disorders, it'll get you in a heartbeat when you think that you're in pretty good recovery like that. It can get you. So that's why we do have to continue in our recovery and, you know, and keep those, you know, I started Overeaters Anonymous in 1972. And in 1985, September the 19th of 1985, I went to treatment and I was 100 times worse than I was in 72. I mean, I was sick with bulimia so bad that I was, you know, I certainly could have died. I got that bad, but I didn't know that there was a place for folks like us or like me to go. And my point is, the food piece cannot, I mean, it has to be dealt with in such a serious way because we deal with the substance every day. And my little husband would always say, you know, when he passed away, he had 32 years of sobriety in AA, and he'd always tell me, he said, now you can talk about me and say anything you want to in your talks about me, but don't forget to sober me up. So I just sobered him up. He was sober when he passed away, 32 years. And he'd always say, he would say, I don't know if I could drink 3 measured drinks, you know, 3 measured drinks of scotch a day. He'd say, how do you do it? How do you eat 3 balanced meals a day? And then get up and go and live your life. And, you know, I loved that he felt sorry for me. He did not have to feel sorry for me because I found a way to treat my food addiction. It's the same way that he was treating his alcoholism, that it was more specific. I had to go to a specific group called Overeaters Anonymous and there's Food Addicts Anonymous and there's Eating Disorder Anonymous. We have to get with like kind because otherwise people don't understand. You know, the guys and gals, but mainly the guys, once they found out I went to treatment for an eating disorder, and we were pretty, I mean, we spoke a lot in I mean, we were not, there's no stars in the program, but we were, we went around to little towns, my husband and I did, and we would speak as a couple. We were well known in the recovery community. And so when I went to treatment, people thought I had lost my ever loving mind because no one ever heard of anybody going to treatment for food addiction. They thought I was nuts. And so the guys, there's one in particular, there's always these, particularly guys in the program that are, and I love the traditions, but they are tradition thumpers, and he would talk to me about, he said, there is no such thing as food addiction. Here, why don't you have one of these candy bars? I always had candy bars sitting on a table. And so I'm saying that to say there's a lot of people who don't understand about food addiction and eating disorders, and they don't have to. Who has to understand are those of us who have it. So I didn't intend to get into all of that, but evidently I needed to. And so the thing that is, and I'm going to close with this, the joy that we have in a 12-step program is that we get with like kind who, when we tell them that our secrets, they know what we're talking about because they've been there. They don't look at us like we're nuts, or they don't start backing off away from us. I went to many, many therapists, and they were good people, psychologists had big names and big prices. But not one ever said, you have an eating disorder that is much like the disease of alcoholism. It is an addiction, and that you have a problem, and this is the solution. No one, not one. And that's why we do what we do today, because I want people to know if they're dying from an eating disorder, at least they need to know what they're dying from. Then if they choose not to treat it, it's their business. Okay, I've gotten on my bandstand here, and so I've gone, I do this sometimes. I quit sharing and go to preaching. So anyway, secrets keep us sick, and the truth will set us free. So I got some really long-term, good, short-term, middle-term people in recovery here. So I'd like to hear from some of y'all. And if those of us with eating disorders ever got to tell in an AA meeting some of the stuff that we do with food, it would curl the toenails of alcoholics and drug addicts. They cannot hold a candle to some of the stuff that we do to our bodies. And I mean, I'm certainly not discounting, because I am one, alcoholism and drug addiction. But I'll tell you, the food addiction is a big, big deal, and a lot of people don't want to treat it. So there you go. All right, but I've got people here that treat it. Megan, what do you have to say about the truth will set us free, about keeping secrets? You have anything for us today?
Well, I was thinking about when you shared the story about the family and the little sister that told the story. I remember the first, maybe it was the second. The first was maybe the sexual abuse, but I remember being told not to talk about that. And then I also remember there was a time where my parents got in a fight. My dad raged and he ripped my mom's blouse, just ripped it right in half. And it was a day that we had family pictures done. And so when the pictures came back, I remember we were at my grandparents' house and my mom was giving them copies of the family pictures. And I was maybe 4, 5. And I said, that's the shirt that daddy ripped off mommy. And I had been told not to repeat that. And I remember saying, no, that's not true. Just hearing that, having my truth, and the truth, having my truth, my reality invalidated.
Right.
And that was, I think for me, for a lot of us, that's where a lot of that imposter syndrome comes from. Speaking the truth and being told that the truth is wrong and starting to question everything. And I remember the first time I told my aunt about the sexual abuse, and her just having absolutely no idea. So I think as a parent, one of the foremost things for me is validating Bodhi's reality.
Mhm.
Even if it's askew, that's his reality. And so validating that and then coaching him through and trying to get him to where it really is. And that's a little bit different with the autism piece and the ADHD, but just I feel very cautious in making sure that he's never invalidated. So that's all I got. Thank
That's
you.
a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, and when a child's truth is not validated, what it starts is that merry-go-round of denial, and and it's the crazy making of living in dysfunction, because then children get to doubt their own reality. And so, yeah, thanks, Megan. All right, who's next? Who would like to say something about dishonesty? Anyone have anything? Or do you want me to call on you? Come on, Bradley, talk. You knew I was going to call on you, didn't you? Bradley.
One of the things I was typing in the chat, I recently attended a training on intimate partner violence and domestic violence. One of the things for us to remember as we're working with children and as we're dealing with our own children is they say that if you're interviewing as a clinician someone for intimate partner violence or something like that, to never interview them with someone over the age of 2, because children over the age of 2, all children are impressionable, but over the age of 2, it's funny. She was just sharing about about talking about the torn blouse, but over the age of 2, they're able to communicate. Oh, well, mommy was talking to the person at the hospital and tell them all the bad stuff you do, daddy, and things like that. And so that's really important when we're working with kids, when we're talking with another addict and alcoholic. That child has already lived that. Let's not let them relive that. I think Tennie said a great thing about having, if you're going to work with someone that's doing a 5th step, or even a 12-step call, taking that small child out of the room, or hopefully, allowing them another opportunity because they've lived it. Let's not let them relive it over and over and over again. And so that's an important thing, I think, for us to remember when we're working with other alcoholics and addicts and even eating disorders. Tennie says that allegedly y'all do worse stuff than us. But let's just kind of remember that in the training, they say that a child 2 or over will repeat, will share, even if you tell them not to. And so just when we're talking with that, and that'll be my contribution for the day, and I'm gonna listen to everybody else.
All righty. Thanks, Bradley. Good to see you. It's Jackie. You have anything?
Hey there, Tennie. Wow, what a good talk. Yeah, first of all, you're only as sick as your secrets. And you'd mentioned at the beginning of the talk, and it brings tears to my eyes when I think of it, about the shame that Carly was carrying with her secrets in our family. And we had no clue until we got to Shades. And it was very, very, you'd mentioned children need to be protected. And as parents, we couldn't protect her from what happened to her. We felt like we had failed, and we felt like we just, you as a parent, you always want your child to be healthy and well and feel loved and protected. And we couldn't do that for her. And you bringing to light what the secret was allowed her to heal and feel that love, because we were able to reconnect with her there at Family Week and then afterwards. And it allowed her to feel safe and loved from us again. That work we did, I think, was the most powerful work I've ever done in my life in that room. I will never forget it as long as I live. And I know that allowed Carly and I to bond like a mother and daughter could, and allowed her to feel safe and loved and feel it again, because she was so shut down and had so much shame that she couldn't even feel what we were trying to give her. And then it allowed me to learn too how to be a better parent. Everything that I learned at Shades helped me become better at being a parent. Particularly that dang hula that I carried around for 3 weeks. I to this day share that hula with my sponsees. I share them with even my daughter said, Carly told me, yep, I told her you got to jump back in your hula. I still up to this day, but I can use that as just a visual aid to me to remember, hey, this is out of my control. This is not something I'm supposed to fix. I need to focus on myself. And that's when going back into the step work and the recovery in the rooms, like you had mentioned on the Titanic, everybody, once they got to shore, they stopped going. Well, that's where the trouble comes in, because then you have all the PTSD and trauma associated with what just happened out in the water that's never addressed. For me, I'm able to still address my work that I do by going back into the rooms. I always attend my Al-Anon and my AA. I'm 12 years sober in June. I attend that every week, and I don't not go, because I know that when I stop going, that's when, I've got a problem. And it's really important to keep doing the work and suiting up and showing up. And so for that, and last but not least, I just have to say your analogy about the tiger and the food was so amazing to me to have that, because I'd never thought of it quite that way. Because alcohol, I don't drink. I can, lock it away and know I'm safe as long as I don't take that first drink. With food, you have to eat 3 times a day. And the thought of me having a little bit of alcohol 3 times a day and then having to put it back on the shelf, that to me seems like an impossible task. So I have so much more respect and understanding of what an eating disorder looks like. So thank you for sharing that with us, Tennie, because it was so helpful.
Oh, thank you. Good to see you, Jackie. Good to see
you.
All righty. Anyone else?
Yeah, Tennie, I'll be glad to toss in a couple of pennies here.
All righty. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. And Jackie, I'm with you. 1/3 of an ounce of vodka 3 times a day. There is no way that I could do that. Oh, hey, as I was a little kid, I was offered a reality. I was told, Jeff, would you like a cookie? Oh, wait, it's just before dinner. We shouldn't do that. I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and you can have a cookie and we won't tell anybody, so it won't count. Man, that has cost me thousands of dollars in therapy and dozens of sponsors to get that out of my life. If nobody knows, it does not count. I can embezzle money. I can drink all I want. I can cheat on my wife. I can do whatever as long as nobody knows. God, that has lived with me. And it was not entirely at Shades, but there was a lot of it that came out at Shades that I had to confront and look at and say, that's information I got as a kid, and that is incorrect information, and it has got to go away. And I did a lot of work with sponsors to get that to go away. But damn, the truth, yes, Tennie, without that, we're so screwed. So thank you so much for what you did when I was there to help me deal with that craziness. Bless you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for all you do for our clients. It's really noticed and appreciated. Thank you so much. And there's Miss Natalie from across the pond. I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? All the way from London.
Yeah, well, our clocks go back a different time to you, so we're still on your last week's time. So that's how I could make the meeting.
Good. How are you doing?
I don't know if you.
All righty. There's a kind of, I guess your phone's not.
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Is there a problem? All right. Well, I'm doing good, Tennie. Thank you.
It's good to hear you. Good to see your picture. Yeah, I hope you can join us again. All righty.
Oh, thank you. Lots of love. Lots of love. Bye.
Love you. Good to see you. And there's Miss Jenny, a new mother, a mother of 3 baby boys. You have anything for us, Jenny?
I might have a few things. My name's Jenny. I'm a lot of things, but I'm a mother of 3 as well. Yeah, I'm glad I jumped on this. what I heard mostly was that addiction has to be treated, whatever kind of addiction it is.
Right.
And, you know, for a long time, I went to treatment at Shades in July 2018. My sobriety date with alcohol is later than that. It's May 3rd of 2019. And eating disorder, I can say, is much harder to treat for me than alcohol was. But alcohol gave me a framework, and Shades of Hope, more importantly, gave me a framework for 12-step fellowships. And that allows me to, you know, give up whatever I'm willing to give up that's not serving me in my life. You know, and it's taken almost 4 years now to really absorb a lot of the lessons that I picked up in treatment. I'm just so grateful today that that I was able to go to treatment and that I went to Shades of Hope, because it, you know, I didn't get that attitude of, well, you know, if you're not an alcoholic, then you're not an addict, you know, because that would have killed me, you know, and others like me. My husband is a real drug addict, and he doesn't understand eating disorder, but he does understand addiction and what it takes to work steps. And he respects that it's different and it's hard for eating disorder. I guess the last thing I'll say is what I've learned over the past couple of months is that, you know, just like with alcohol, I can remove the treatment for the problem, which was the addiction, right? I can remove the alcohol and I can remove compulsive eating behaviors. But if I don't replace that with something, then I'm stuck. And for me, you know, having a family and having children has been a huge part of, it's a lot, but it's a huge part of meaning in my life. I remember telling Tennie at some sort of part of Family Week or something, I was never going to have kids, you know, and believing myself when I said it. But when I let go of absolute control, or what I thought was control over my life, strange and very wonderful things started happening. And, you know, I have Shades to thank for opening that door. But I think for me, I have to replace it with something, and I replace it, the addiction, today with a meeting, with working with a sponsee who's just now getting back into the rooms, and was where I was in 2018. And with, you know, raising a really young family, 3 boys under 2 years old, and that keeps me plenty busy. So with that, I'll pass.
It does. They'll all grow up together. Good to see you, hear from you, Jenny. All right, anyone else? Any volunteers? Robert, how are you doing there in Savannah?
Hey, Jenny. Doing great. The azaleas are in bloom, and still waiting for you to come visit.
I would love to. This is a beautiful time in Savannah.
That's right, as you well know. Thank you for today's talk. As always, I'm always inspired by what you say and the contributions of the others. The notion that struck home for me about telling truth will set us free is the notion of telling myself the truth and being honest with myself. And I'm struggling with that. I understand that telling the truth to your sponsor and to others is really important, but I think the first step is to tell the truth to yourself. And I'm working through that. And since treatment was 6 weeks ago, I guess, you know, I've immersed myself in a recovery program. I attend OA meetings, and you know, I'm reading the big book, and but there's a part of me that's going kicking and screaming a little bit. There's some denial there, and I'm trying to work through that. And I know a lot of that has to do with dropping my arrogance that I can do this by myself, and dropping the denial that I have that I can you know, that I don't need fellowship, that I can do this myself. I know that's a bunch of crap. And I know that that's not the truth, but I'm getting to the point more and more where I'm becoming more honest with myself. And beginning to tell the truth to myself.
Good for you. Yeah, we're the, it's hard when you lie to yourself, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that you have the reality that you know that meetings are going to help, the fellowship will help. Absolutely. It will help. And, you know, what I was told is get an old timer with one hand and a newcomer with the other one, and we don't have a hand to pick up the substance, you know. So it's about getting busy in the program. And you know, for those of you that, I mean, I guess all of you are out of town except Jeff. We have started back the Saturday morning OA meeting at Shades, and it's going really good. I was on a cruise and we went to an OA meeting every day, and I was just inspired to come back and start the meeting. And so if any of you are in town, just know that we have the OA meeting 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and hope you'll come and join us. All righty, we have time for another one. No, I guess we don't. Anyone have a burning desire? Anyone have something they would really like to share? All righty, have a wonderful week. And speaking of Savannah, I was watching an old movie the other night. My daughter and I was watching Forrest Gump, and saw him sitting there on that bench in Savannah. It really made me want to come down to Savannah. Savannah is one of my most favorite places to go. So we're going to try to make it one weekend. I'll let you know, Robert. All righty. Good to see all of you, and hope to see you next week as we talk about adult children of alcoholics. See you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, Tennie. Love you.
I love you. Love all of you. Bye-bye.